He sat in the same corner booth for 92 mornings. Always alone. Always silent. An elderly Japanese man in a charcoal coat, hands folded on the table like he was waiting for someone who would never come. Most people didn't even notice him. Those who did whispered, then looked away. He never spoke to anyone. Never made eye contact. Never smiled. Until one Tuesday morning, a waitress approached his table and said something in perfect Japanese. What happened next left her trembling. And what she discovered 3 weeks later would shake this small town to its core. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Lakewood, Pennsylvania, wasn't the kind of place where strangers went unnoticed. Population 11,000. 2 high schools. 1 main street. The kind of town where your neighbor knows what time you leave for work and whether you've been keeping up with your lawn. So when an elderly Asian man started appearing at Rose's Diner every single morning at 6:01 a.m., people talked. He always wore the same charcoal wool coat. Even when spring arrived. Always carried a worn leather briefcase. Always ordered the same thing. Green tea. Scrambled eggs. Wheat toast. He ate slowly. Methodically. As if each bite required concentration. His hands shook slightly when he lifted his cup, and when he finished, he would sit there for exactly 30 minutes, staring out the window at nothing in particular, before leaving a $20 bill on the table and walking out without a word. The waitresses rotated shifts, but none of them ever heard his voice. Not once. Maybe he doesn't speak English, someone suggested. Maybe he's grieving, another whispered. But the truth was, nobody knew, and in a small town where everyone's story is public knowledge, mystery makes people uncomfortable, so they left him alone. All except one person. Isabella Miles had worked at Rose's Diner for 11 years. She was 46. With kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. Which she did often despite having every reason not to. She had 2 kids struggling to find their footing. Her son Marcus was 24. Bouncing between jobs. Her daughter Keisha was 21. Working nights at a grocery store to pay for community college. And Isabella's mother, Dorothy, had been diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer 14 months earlier. The treatments were brutal. The medical bills were worse. Isabella worked double shifts. Mornings at the diner. Evenings cleaning office buildings downtown. She slept 5 hours a night if she was lucky. But she never complained. Because complaining didn't pay the bills. Complaining didn't keep her mother comfortable. So she smiled. She worked. She kept moving forward. And somewhere in the middle of all that exhaustion, she noticed him. The quiet man in the corner booth. The one everyone else had given up trying to talk to. She saw something in his eyes. The same heaviness she carried. The same exhaustion that comes from grieving while the world keeps spinning. It was a Tuesday morning in early April. The kind where the sun comes up soft and golden, and the world feels almost hopeful. Isabella was covering the early shift. There were only 4 customers in the diner, the usual construction crew, an older couple sharing pancakes, and him. The quiet man in booth 7, Isabella poured his tea like she always did. Set down his plate of eggs and toast. But this time, instead of walking away, she paused. She didn't plan it. Didn't rehearse it. She just looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she recognized. The heaviness in his shoulders. The faraway look in his eyes. The way his hands trembled when he reached for his fork. She knew that look. She'd seen it in the mirror on mornings after visiting her mother in the hospital. So she did something she hadn't done in over 20 years. She leaned down slightly, smiled gently, and said, "Ohayo gozaimasu, good morning." In Japanese. The man froze. His fork clattered onto the plate. His breath caught in his throat. Slowly, painfully, he lifted his eyes to meet hers. And then the tears came. Silent. Unstoppable. Rolling down his weathered cheeks as his hands began to shake. Isabella's heart clenched. She hadn't meant to make him cry. "I'm sorry," she whispered, switching back to English. "I didn't mean to upset you." The man shook his head quickly, wiping his eyes with trembling fingers. And then, in a voice rough with emotion and disuse, he spoke, "No, please. Don't apologize." His English was careful, accented, but clear. "You said my wife's words." The way she said them every morning for 43 years. Isabella felt her own eyes sting. She pulled out a chair and sat down across from him. "What was her name?" she asked softly. "Aiko," he said. And just speaking it seemed to crack something open inside him. Her name was Aiko. And she wanted so badly to come here. To this town. She collected postcards of American diners. Had a whole book of them. Said she wanted to visit every single one and meet the people who made them feel like home. He paused, struggling. But she never got the chance. Cancer took her 13 months ago. Pancreatic. By the time they found it, there was nothing they could do. Isabella reached across the table and placed her hand over his. She didn't say anything. Sometimes there are no words. Sometimes presence is enough. Over the next week, he told her everything. His name was Kenshin Himura. He had been an executive at a manufacturing firm in Osaka. Successful enough to provide well for his family. He and Aiko had met at the university. She studied literature, he studied engineering. They were opposites in almost every way, but somehow it worked. She softened his edges. He grounded her dreams. They had one son, Kenji, who now ran the family business back in Japan, but Kenshin couldn't talk to his son about this kind of pain. Men in his generation didn't talk about feelings. They endured. So when Aiko died, Kenshin went back to work. Attended meetings. Signed documents. Pretended everything was fine. But inside, he was collapsing. Until one night, going through Aiko's things, he found her notebook. A small, worn journal filled with handwritten lists. Places she wanted to see. Foods she wanted to try. And on the first page, underlined 3 times, Rose's Diner, Lakewood, Pennsylvania. They say it has the best pie in America. That's when Kenshin made his decision. He couldn't bring her back, but he could see the world she dreamed of. So he left Japan. Came here. To Lakewood. To Rose's Diner. To Booth 7. Where he sat every morning, trying to imagine what Aiko would have said if she were sitting across from him. Isabella never expected that one greeting to matter. She had studied Japanese in college, back when she was 19, and the world still felt full of possibilities. She'd wanted to be a translator, maybe work overseas. She was good at it. Really good. Her professor had even written her a recommendation for a study abroad program in Tokyo, but then life happened. Her father got sick, her mother needed help. Isabella dropped out after 2 years to work full-time. She met a man. Got pregnant. Got married. Got divorced. The Japanese sat unused in the back of her mind for over 2 decades, like a book on a shelf she never opened anymore. Until that Tuesday morning. And suddenly, that forgotten skill became the bridge between 2 broken hearts. You know what's strange? Isabella said one morning as she refilled Kenshin's tea. I almost didn't say anything. I thought maybe it would seem weird or intrusive, but something just told me to do it. Kenshin smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. Aiko used to say that the universe speaks to us in whispers. We just have to be quiet enough to listen. If you're still watching this far, drop a comment below and tell us. Have you ever had a moment where a small act of kindness changed everything? We'd love to hear your story. Kenshin started coming earlier. Staying longer. He and Isabella would talk in the quiet hours before the diner filled up. Sometimes in English. Sometimes in broken Japanese. Sometimes in the language of shared silence. He told her about Aiko's laugh. The way she hummed while cooking. The way she left little notes in his briefcase before work trips. Isabella told him about her mother. About the fear of losing her. About the guilt of not being able to do more. They talked about grief. About love. About the strange way hope finds you even when you're not looking for it. And slowly, something shifted. Kenshin's shoulders didn't seem as heavy. His hands didn't shake as much. He started smiling at other customers. Started saying good morning to the cook. Started living again. Even just a little. Because sometimes healing isn't a solo journey. Sometimes you need someone to walk beside you. Someone who understands what it's like to carry weight you can't put down. 3 weeks after that first conversation, Isabella arrived at work to find the diner buzzing with unusual energy. Jenny, the other waitress, grabbed her arm the moment she walked in. Did you see the news? What news? About your guy. The Japanese man. Booth 7. Isabella's stomach dropped. Jenny pulled out her phone and showed her an article from a Japanese business magazine, translated into English. The headline read, Industrial pioneer Kenshin Himura quietly disappears from public life. There was a photo, a much younger version of Kenshin, standing in a suit in front of a massive factory complex, shaking hands with government officials. The article explained that Kenshin wasn't just some retired executive, he was one of the leading figures in Japan's automotive parts industry. His company employed over 8,000 people. He held patents on manufacturing processes used worldwide. He'd been featured in financial magazines, consulted by governments. And he'd walked away from all of it after his wife died. Nobody knew where he'd gone. His son had released a brief statement saying his father needed time for personal reasons. But the business world was full of speculation. None of them guessed the truth. That he was sitting in a small town diner in Pennsylvania, eating scrambled eggs and talking to a waitress about grief. Isabella didn't say anything to Kenshin at first. She didn't want him to feel exposed. But he noticed the shift in her energy. Finally, one morning, he set down his teacup and said quietly, "You know, don't you?" She sat down slowly. "I saw an article. I wasn't looking for it. Someone else showed me." Kenshin nodded. He didn't seem angry. Just tired. "Does it change things?" Should it?" Isabella asked. Kenshin said quietly, "People treat me differently when they know. They either want something from me or they don't believe I could be hurting because I have money, as if wealth makes you immune to loss." Isabella shook her head. "Money doesn't bring people back. It doesn't make the bed feel less empty. It doesn't stop you from reaching for someone who isn't there anymore." Kenshin's eyes filled again. "No, it doesn't." "Then it doesn't change anything," Isabella said firmly. "You're still just a man who loved his wife. And I'm still just glad I said good morning." Kenshin stayed in Lakewood for 2 more weeks. He visited the places Aiko had written about. The small bookstore on Main Street. The park by the river. The bakery that made cinnamon rolls the size of dinner plates. And every morning, he came back to Rose's diner. Back to booth 7. Back to Isabella. On his last day, he arrived earlier than usual. The sun was barely up. Isabella was the only one working. He ordered as usual. But when she brought his tea, he handed her an envelope. "What's this?" she asked. "A thank you. Please. Don't open it until I leave." "Kenshin, you don't have to." "I know. But I want to. You gave me something I didn't think I'd ever feel again. You gave me a reason to keep going. Please. Let me do this." Isabella's throat tightened. She nodded. He finished his breakfast in silence, then he stood, bowed deeply, and walked out of the diner for the last time. Isabella waited until his car disappeared down the street before she opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note in careful English. "Your kindness reminded me that Aiko's love still exists in this world. It exists in small gestures. In soft words. In people like you who see strangers and choose not to look away. Please use this to take care of your mother, and please know that you saved a life without even realizing it." Beneath the note was a check. Isabella's hands trembled as she read the amount. $50,000. She stood there in the empty diner, holding the check, unable to breathe. It was more money than she'd seen in her entire life. Enough to cover her mother's medical bills, enough to give Keisha a real shot at finishing college, enough to stop living paycheck to paycheck, at least for a while. When she went to the bank, the teller confirmed it. The check was legitimate. She paid off her mother's hospital debt first, then she set aside money for Keisha's tuition. Because for the first time in over a decade, she wasn't drowning. And it was all because she said good morning in a language she thought she'd forgotten. Isabella never saw Kenshin again. She tried to find him online. Sent a letter to the business address listed in the article. But she never got a response. She didn't know if he'd gone back to Japan, if he'd found peace, if he was okay. Until one April morning, exactly 1 year after he left. Isabella walked into the diner and found a bouquet on the counter. White lilies. Dozens of them, wrapped in delicate paper with a small card that read, in Japanese, "Arigato gozaimasu. Aiko would have loved you." There was no name. No return address. But Isabella knew. And every year after that, on the same day, the lilies arrived. Sometimes delivered, sometimes left on the doorstep before dawn. Always white, always perfect. A quiet reminder that some connections don't end just because people leave. Some kindness echoes forever. Grief is a strange thing. It isolates us. Makes us believe we have to carry everything alone. But the truth is, we're all walking around with invisible weight, and sometimes, all it takes is one person. One moment. One word spoken in kindness to remind us that we're not alone. That we're seen. That we matter. Kenshin came to Lakewood looking for his wife. And he found something else. A reason to keep living. Isabella was just trying to survive. And she found something too. A reminder that the smallest gestures can change everything. So let me ask you this. If you were in that diner that morning, would you have said something? Would you have taken the time to notice the quiet stranger in the corner? Or would you have walked past, as so many others did? Drop your answer in the comments. Tell us about a time someone's kindness changed your life. Or a time you wish you'd spoken up, because your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Thanks for watching. If this moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you never know what battle someone is fighting. So be kind, Always.